high, sweet humming pierced the roar of the blizzard, vibrating right through the cabin walls. It was the lullaby Mary sang to their son before the fever took them both. Silas dropped his glass. He ripped the door open. A boy stood there. Tiny. Freezing. Wearing a coat 3 sizes too big. The child stopped humming. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a wooden soldier. He said, "You'd be lonely, Silas." The rancher fell to his knees. He carved the toy the day he buried them. The whiskey glass hit the oak table. Hard. Silas stared at the amber liquid. It was the only warmth left in the Wyoming winter. 3 years. 3 years since the fever burned through the valley. 3 years since he dug the 2 graves under the cottonwood tree. Now, there was only silence. The cabin walls creaked under the heavy weight of the blizzard outside. The wind howled like a wounded animal, scratching at the heavy timber door. Silas closed his eyes. He sat in the dark, waiting for the fire to die. He wanted the cold to come in. He wanted it to finish what the fever started. Then, a sound cut through the roaring wind. It wasn't a coyote. It wasn't a branch hitting the roof. It was a high, steady humming. Silas went rigid in his chair. The hair on his arms stood up. The melody drifted through the cracks in the logs. Sweet. Mournful. Impossible. It was the same tune Mary used to hum. She hummed it to the cradle when the fever was at its worst. Silas gripped the edge of the table. His knuckles turned white. He told himself it was the whiskey. He told himself the grief had finally driven him mad. But the humming didn't stop. It vibrated against the porch steps. Closer. Louder. A physical weight pressing against the door. Silas stood up. The chair scraped loudly against the floorboards. He marched to the door and threw the latch. The hinges screamed as he ripped it open. The blizzard punched him in the chest. Snow swirled into the room, hissing as it hit the fireplace. Silas didn't feel the cold. He only saw the boy. Tiny. Shivering. Wearing a wool coat 3 sizes too big that dragged in the snow. The child looked up, his lips blue and trembling. The humming stopped. The silence rushed back in, heavier than before. The boy didn't beg. He didn't cry for help. He just reached into his deep pocket. He pulled out a small, wooden object. A soldier. Rough-hewn pine with one leg shorter than the other. Silas felt the air leave his lungs. He knew every notch on that wood. He had whittled it by candlelight while his wife wept in the next room. He placed it in the coffin with his own hands. He said, "You'd be lonely, Silas." The boy's voice was like cracking ice. The rancher fell to his knees in the snow. He grabbed the child by the shoulders. He pulled the freezing weight of the boy across the threshold. He kicked the door shut against the storm. The lock clicked. Inside, the fire crackled, casting long shadows against the wall. Silas stared at the boy. And the boy stared at the wooden soldier. The ghost of the melody still hung in the air. The solitude was broken. Silas placed the lantern on the floor. The light danced across the rough timber walls. Steam rose from the boy's wool coat. It smelled like wet dog and old ice. Silas knelt. His knees popped. He reached for the buttons of the coat. The boy flinched. He scrambled backward like a crab. His back hit the stone of the fireplace. Silas froze. He held his hands up, palms open, rough calluses catching the firelight. "I ain't gonna hurt you, boy." His voice sounded rusty. He hadn't spoken to a soul in months. The wind battered the roof shingles. A branch snapped outside like a rifle shot. The boy didn't blink. He clutched the wooden soldier to his chest. His knuckles were white. Silas sighed. He stood up and walked to the stove. The iron door creaked as he opened it. He shoved a piece of oak inside. Sparks flew up the chimney. The room was warming up, but the boy was still shaking. A rhythmic tremor. Silas grabbed a blanket from the rocker. It was dusty. It hadn't been used since Mary died. He tossed it near the boy. "Take it." The boy stared at the wool. Slowly, he reached out one hand. He pulled the blanket tight around his shoulders. He looked like a small, gray ghost. Silas turned back to the stove. He needed to busy his hands. He couldn't look at the child. Looking hurt. He filled a pot with water from the bucket. The ladle scraped the metal bottom. He threw in dried beef and an onion. Simple food. Cowboy food. The aroma began to fill the cabin. Salty. Rich. It fought against the smell of the storm. Then, the sound started again. Hello, steady thrumming. Silas stiffened. He gripped the ladle tight. The boy was humming. It wasn't a lullaby this time. It was a single, flat note, like a wire pulled tight in the wind. It grated on Silas's nerves. "Stop that." Silas growled the words without turning. The humming continued. Louder now. Silas spun around. The ladle dripped broth onto the floor. I said quiet. The boy didn't stop. He was rocking back and forth. His eyes were squeezed shut. He was gone. Lost in some dark place inside his head. Silas felt a spike of anger. He walked over. His boots thudded heavy on the planks. He reached down to shake the boy's shoulder, to snap him out of it. But his hand stopped an inch from the wool blanket. He saw the boy's face clearly in the firelight. A tear tracked through the grime on his cheek. The humming wasn't a game. It was a shield. Silas pulled his hand back. He felt ashamed. He retreated to the stove. He stirred the soup. Round and round. The spoon clinked against the iron. A steady, domestic rhythm against the chaotic wind outside. 10 minutes passed. The soup boiled. Silas poured a bowl. He grabbed a spoon. He walked back to the hearth. He set the bowl on the floor. Eat. The boy opened his eyes. He looked at the steam rising from the bowl. He looked at Silas. Then he looked at the wooden soldier. He whispered to the toy, "It's hot, Papa." Silas felt the blood drain from his face. The room spun. "Who are you talking to?" Silas demanded. The boy didn't answer. He dipped the spoon into the broth. He took a sip. He winced at the heat. But he kept eating. Starving. Silas watched the wooden soldier. He saw the chip on the hat. He remembered the knife slipping. He remembered the drop of blood that stained the wood. He leaned in close. "Give me the toy, son. Let me see it." Silas reached out. The boy dropped the spoon. Clatter. He snatched the toy away. He buried it deep in the folds of the blanket. His eyes went wide. Terror. Pure, white-hot terror. "Mine." The boy croaked. Silas sat back on his heels. He held his hands up again. "All right. All right. Keep it." The tension in the room was thick. Thicker than the smoke from the fire. Silas retreated to his chair. He picked up his whiskey glass. It was empty. He didn't refill it. He just watched. The boy finished the soup. He licked the spoon clean. The warmth of the food worked fast. The boy's eyelids drooped. He slumped sideways against the warm stones. The humming started again. But it was softer now. Sleepy. It matched the rhythm of the dying wind outside. Silas listened. He tried to hate the sound. He tried to hate the intrusion. But the rhythm was familiar. It was the sound of life. And for the first time in 3 years, the cabin didn't feel like a tomb. Silas looked at the window. The frost was thick on the glass. Something moved out there. A shadow in the snow. Silas blinked. He stood up and walked to the pane. He rubbed a circle in the frost. Nothing. Just the white void. Just the storm. But the hair on his neck didn't lie. Someone was watching. Silas checked the latch on the door. He walked to the mantel. He took down the Winchester. The metal was cold in his hands. He sat back down in the dark. He watched the boy sleep. He listened to the humming, and he waited. Dawn broke like a bruised knuckle, purple and gray, cold enough to snap iron. Silas sat up in the chair. His neck was stiff. The fire had burned down to ash. The cabin was silent. He looked at the rug. The boy was gone. Silas's heart hammered a frantic rhythm against his ribs. He stood up. Too fast. The room tilted. He rushed to the window. The frost was thick. He couldn't see out. He grabbed the door handle. The cold metal bit his palm. He yanked it open. The wind was gone. The silence of the snow was deafening. And there he was, the boy, standing on the edge of the porch, looking out at the white ocean of the valley. He was still wearing that oversized coat. It swallowed him whole. Silas let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. White steam in the freezing air. "Come inside," Silas ordered. The boy turned. His eyes were old, too old for a face that small. He walked back in. The boots he wore were split at the seams. Silas shut the door. He locked it. A heavy click. He moved to the stove. He stirred the embers. He fed them kindling. The fire roared back to life. Heat. It hit the boy's face. His nose was running. "Strip," Silas said. The boy froze. His hands flew to the buttons of the coat. "Protecting. I need to wash the clothes, boy. They smell like a barn. And you need hot water." The boy didn't move. He backed away. The fear was back, sharp and bright. Silas softened his voice. He tried to remember how Mary spoke to the horses. "I got spare clothes. My son's. They'll fit you better." The mention of the sun hung in the air. The boy lowered his hands. Slowly, he unbuttoned the coat. He let it drop to the floor. Then the shirt, a ragged gray thing. He pulled it over his head. Silas turned to grab the water bucket. He stopped. The ladle fell from his hand. It clattered on the floorboards. The sound echoed like a gunshot. The boy's back was a map of pain. Lines. Thick, raised welts. Some old and white. Some pink and angry. Cross-hatched over his ribs. Silas felt the bile rise in his throat. That wasn't an accident. That wasn't a fall. That was a belt. Or a switch. Silas took a step forward. His hand reached out, trembling. "Who did this?" His voice was a growl, low and dangerous. The boy spun around. He snatched the shirt from the floor. He pressed it to his chest, hiding the truth. He didn't speak. He just hummed. A high, frantic note. A warning. Silas pulled his hand back. He saw the terror in the boy's eyes. He saw the way the boy looked at the door, measuring the distance. Calculated flight. Silas backed off. He raised his hands. "Okay. Okay. Water's hot. Wash up." Silas turned his back. He gave the boy privacy. He stared into the fire. He watched the flames eat the wood. He felt a new kind of cold. A cold that fire couldn't touch. The rage simmered in his gut. He wanted to hit something. He needed to hit something. He grabbed his coat. He grabbed his hat. "I'll be outside, chopping wood." He didn't wait for an answer. He walked out into the snow. The air was crisp. It burned his lungs. Good. He walked to the woodpile. The axe was stuck in a stump, handle smooth from years of use. Silence scripted. He swung. Whack. The hog split. Clean. Two halves fell into the snow. He set up another. Thwack. The sound was sharp, rhythmic. It echoed off the barn walls. Thwack. Thwack. He imagined the face of the man who held the bell. He swung harder. Wood chips flew like shrapnel. Sweat cooled down his neck. He lost track of time. The pile of split wood grew, a fortress of oak. Then, a crunch in the snow. Silas stopped, axe mid-swing. He turned. The boy was there. He was wearing Silas's son's clothes, a flannel shirt, blue jeans rolled up at the cuff. He looked like a ghost of the past. Silas lowered the axe. The boy looked at the wood, then at the axe. He stepped forward. He held on his hands, small, pale. Silas hesitated. The axe was heavy, dangerous, but the boy's eyes were steady. Silas handed it over. The boy gripped the handle. It dragged in the snow. He lifted it, struggling. The weight was too much. Silas stepped in. He stood behind the boy. He placed his large hands over the small ones. He guided the swing. Up, down, whack. The axe bit into the wood. It didn't split, but it stuck. The boy looked up. A small smile touched his lips. The humming started, low, in time with their breathing. Silas pulled the axe free. Again. Silas said, up, down, quack. The sound was louder this time, stronger. They worked together, man and boy, one rhythm. The cold retreated. The sweat was honest. The work was good. For an hour, there was no past, no graves, no scars, just the wood and the steel. Silas paused to wipe his brow. He looked up at the ridge line. The smile faded from his face. The sun caught something. Metal, glass, a flash of light on the distant hill, black against the white snow. A carriage, sitting still, watching. Silas tightened his grip on the axe handle. The boy sensed the change. He stopped humming. He followed Silas's gaze. He went rigid. He knew that carriage. Silas stepped in front of the boy, blocking the view. A human shield. He put a hand on the boy's shoulder. Inside. Now. Silas didn't look down. He kept his eyes on the ridge. The carriage didn't move, but the threat rolled down the hill like an avalanche. Silas waited until the boy was through the door. He waited until the latch clicked. Then he drove the axe into the stump. Deep. He wasn't chopping wood anymore. He was sharpening a weapon. Pine shavings curled on the floor like ribbons of gold. The knife scraped against the wood. Scratch, scratch. Silas blew the dust away. He didn't look up. He felt the boy's eyes on him. Leo sat on the rug, cross-legged. The wooden soldier was balanced on his knee. The cabin was warm. The storm had broken 2 days ago. Now, only the deep freeze remained. But inside, the stove roared. Silas turned the block of wood in his hand. It was taking shape. A neck, a mane, 4 sturdy legs. He worked with a patience he thought he'd lost. The knife was an extension of his thumb. He carved the ears, pricked forward, alerted. He carved the tail, flowing back, like it was running in the wind. The silence in the room wasn't heavy anymore. It was comfortable, like an old blanket. Then, the humming started. Silas paused. The knife hovered over the wood. He waited for the mournful wail. He waited for the sound of a wounded animal. But it didn't come. The sound was different. It was soft, light. It bounced gently off the timber walls. It wasn't a shield anymore. It was a song. Silas looked down at the boy. Leo was rocking slightly. His eyes were closed, but his face wasn't twisted in pain. It was peaceful. Silas felt a lump in his throat. He swallowed it down. He went back to work. Scratch, scratch. The rhythm of the knife joined the rhythm of the song. A duet in the quiet cabin. Silas finished the last hoof. He used his thumb to smooth the rough grain. He checked the balance. It stood perfect on the table. Done. Silas cleared his throat. The humming stopped. Leo opened his eyes. He looked at the table. He looked at the horse. Silas pushed it forward. Across the oak surface. A soldier needs a horse. Silas said. Can't walk everywhere. Leo stared at the carving. He reached out. Hesitant. Like it might bite. His fingers brushed the wood. Warm from Silas's hands. He picked it up. He held it next to the soldier. The scale was perfect. Leo looked at Silas. His eyes were wet. But not from fear. The corners of his mouth twitched. Upwards. A smile. It was small. Fragile. But it lit up the room brighter than the kerosene lamp. Thank you. The voice was whisper soft. Silas nodded. He couldn't speak. He stood up abruptly. He grabbed the kettle. Coffee. He needed coffee. He needed to hide his face. The boy was getting to him. Thawing the ice he had carefully built for 3 years. Silas poured the black liquid into his tin cup. The steam hit his face. He took a sip. It scalded his tongue. Good. He needed the pain. He needed to stay sharp. Because the peace was a lie. He knew it. He walked to the window. He scratched a hole in the frost. He looked out at the barn. The shadows were long, blue and purple on the snow. The wind picked up. It rattled the pane. Leo jumped. The smile vanished. He clutched the horse and the soldier to his chest. He looked at the door. Is he coming? Leo asked. The humming started again. Low. Nervous. Silas turned from the window. No. He lied. Nobody's coming. You're safe here. Silas walked over. He put a hand on the boy's head. The hair was soft. Clean. Go to sleep, Leo. Take the horse. Leo nodded. He gathered his treasures. He moved to the pallet by the fire. He curled up under the wool blanket. Silas watched him. He waited until the boy's breathing evened out. He waited until the humming stopped. Then Silas grabbed his coat. He grabbed the Winchester. He opened the door. Quietly. He slipped out into the night. The cold hit him like a hammer. He walked to the perimeter fence. He checked the snow. He was looking for tracks. Wolf. Coyote. Man. He found them near the gate. Fresh. Boot prints. Heavy. Walking up to the fence line. Stopping. And turning back. Silas crouched down. He touched the imprint. The snow was packed hard. Recent. Someone had been here. While they were carving toys. While they were smiling. Silas stood up. He scanned the ridge line. The moon broke through the clouds. It illuminated the valley floor. And there it was. On the crest of the hill. A silhouette against the stars. A carriage. Black as a horse. It wasn't moving. It was waiting. Silas felt the cold steel of the rifle in his hand. He thumbed the hammer. They weren't just watching anymore. They were measuring. They were counting the hours. Silas spat into the snow. He turned back to the cabin. The windows glowed with a warm, orange light. A beacon in the dark. Inside was a boy who had just learned to smile. Inside was a peace Silas hadn't known in years. He wouldn't let them take it. He wouldn't let the darkness back in. He walked back to the porch. His boots crunched loudly on the ice. He sat on the rocking chair. He laid the rifle across his lap. He wasn't going to sleep tonight. He would watch the watcher. The wind chimes Mary had hung years ago clattered above his head. They sang a frantic, metal song. Warning. Warning. Silas pulled his hat low over his eyes. Let them come. The skillet sizzled. Fat popping in the pan. The smell of bacon grease filled the small room. It was a heavy, comforting scent. Leo stood on a crate by the stove. He was stirring the eggs. Careful. Precise. He was wearing the flannel shirt Silas gave him. Sleeves rolled up past his elbows. He looked less like a ghost today. More like a boy. A low sound vibrated in his throat. Humming. It was a happy tune. Bouncy. It matched the popping of the grease. Silas sat at the table. He was oiling his boots. The rag moved in slow circles. Leather drinking in the grease. Silas watched the boy's back. He felt a strange tightness in his chest. It wasn't pain. It was pride. The boy was learning. He was healing. The cabin felt warm. Solid. Impenetrable. Then the humming stopped. Instantly. Like a candle snuffed out. Silas froze. His hand stopped on the boot. He looked at Leo. The boy was rigid. The wooden spoon dripped yellow egg onto the stove. Hiss. Leo wasn't looking at the eggs. He was looking at the window. His face was pale. Chalk white. Silas stood up. The chair legs scraped loud against the floor. He walked to the window. He looked over Leo's head. Out into the yard. The sun was bright. Blinding off the snow. But a shadow had fallen across the gate. A carriage. Black lacquer. Polished to a mirror shine. It looked like a beetle on a wedding dress. Out of place. Wrong. Two black horses stamped the ground. Steam blasting from their nostrils. They were big animals. Expensive. Well-fed. Silas felt the cold seep through the glass. It touched his bones. Stay here. Silas's voice was low. Still. Leo dropped the spoon. He scrambled off the crate. He ran to the corner. He grabbed the wooden soldier. He curled into a ball. Silas didn't look back. He walked to the mantel. He took the Winchester. He checked the load. Full. He walked to the door. He opened it. The warmth of the cabin rushed out. The freezing air rushed in. Silas stepped onto the porch. The door clicked shut behind him. He stood at the top of the steps. He cradled the rifle in his arm. Not aiming. Just holding. Ready. The carriage door opened. A man stepped out. He didn't sink into the snow. He wore tall, leather boots. Polished. Not a speck of mud. His coat was thick fur. Bear? Wolf? It looked heavy. Cost more than Silas's whole herd. The man adjusted his gloves. He looked up at the porch. He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were like flint. Hard. Dead. Silas Vance. The man's voice was smooth. Cultured. It sounded like a city. It sounded like a lodge. Silas didn't move. He didn't blink. Get off my land, Silas said. Quiet. The wind carried the words. The man chuckled. He walked to the gate. He unlatched it. He walked through. Confident. Like he owned the snow he walked on. He stopped 10 paces from the porch. I'm Warden Thorne. State orphanage. You have something of mine. Silas tightened his grip on the rifle. The wood bit into his palm. I got nothing of yours. Thorne sighed. He reached into his coat. Silas tensed. His finger moved to the trigger guard. But Thorne didn't pull a gun. He pulled a paper. Folded. Official. He waved it in the air. The paper snapped in the wind. Leo. Orphan. Ward of the state. Thorne listed the titles. Like he was reading a grocery list. He ran away 3 days ago. Stole property. Endangered himself. Thorne took a step closer. His boots crunched on the ice. I'm here to collect him. Silas looked at the man. He looked at the paper. He looked at the hired man sitting on the carriage box. A shotgun across his knees. Watching. Silas spat off the side of the porch. Boy's staying. Thorne's smile vanished. The mask slipped. Underneath was something ugly. Rotten. "Mr. Vance," Thorne said. His voice was colder now. Sharper. "That isn't a request. That boy is state property. Like a stray dog. Or a lost coin. You are harboring a fugitive." Silas shifted his weight. The floorboards groaned. "He's a child. Not a fugitive. And he ain't going back to get beat. I saw the marks." Thorne's eyes narrowed. "Discipline. Necessary discipline. He is wild. Broken. We fixed them." Silas raised the barrel of the rifle. "Just an inch. Get off my land." The silence stretched. Tight. Vibrating. The horses snorted. The wind whistled through the eaves. Thorne looked at the rifle. He looked at Silas's face. He did the math. He realized Silas wasn't bluffing. He realized the rancher would kill him. Right here. On the porch. Thorne slowly folded the paper. He put it back in his pocket. He smoothed his coat. "Very well," Thorne said. "You wanted to play the hero. Fine. But the law is the law, Mr. Vance. And money buys a lot of law." Thorne turned around. He walked back to the carriage. He didn't hurry. He didn't look afraid. He climbed inside. He rolled down the window. "You have 24 hours. Thorne called out. "Bring the boy to town. Or I bring the town to you. And I won't come alone." The carriage lurched forward. The wheels cut deep ruts in the snow. Black scars on the white ground. Silas watched them go. He watched until they were just a speck on the horizon. He felt the cold now. It wasn't the wind. It was the shadow Thorne left behind. Silas turned. He went back inside. Leo was still in the corner. Still shaking? Silas locked the door. He threw the deadbolt. He walked over to the boy. He knelt down. The humming was gone. The cabin was silent as a grave. Silas reached out. He touched the boy's shoulder. "I'm here," Silas whispered. But as he looked at the terrified child, he knew. The peace was over. The war had come to his door. The clock on the mantel ticked. Loud. Dry. Like a beetle snapping its jaws. Each second chipped away at the deadline. 24 hours. Less now. Silas didn't look at the clock. He was at the window. He was nailing a heavy oak plank across the glass. Bam. Bam. The hammer blows shook the cabin. Dust drifted down from the rafters. Leo sat under the table. He had his hands over his ears. He wasn't humming. He was vibrating. Terror. Silas finished the last nail. He tested the board. Solid. It would stop a bullet. Maybe. He turned to the room. It was dark. Shadows stretched long and thin, like fingers reaching for the boy. Silas wiped the sweat from his forehead. He looked at Leo. "I need to check the barn," Silas said. His voice was rough. "Get the horses inside. Can't leave them exposed." Leo nodded. A jerky, small movement. "Stay here. Don't open the door for anyone. Not even God." Silas grabbed his coat. He grabbed the lantern. He hesitated at the door. He looked back at the boy. He wanted to say something comforting, something soft, but his throat was full of gravel. "I'll be right back." He stepped out into the twilight. The wind caught the door. It slammed shut. Bang. Leo flinched. He was alone. The silence rushed in to fill the space. But it wasn't empty silence. It was full of ghosts. He heard the man's voice in his head. State property. Fugitive. Leo looked at the wooden soldier in his hand. He squeezed it tight. Sharp edges dug into his palm. He looked at the barricaded window. He looked at the rifle on the table. He understood. He was the danger. As long as he was here, the bad men would come. As long as he was here, Silas was in trouble. Leo stood up. His legs felt heavy. Lead. He walked to the table. He placed the wooden soldier next to the lamp. He didn't want to leave it. It was his heart. But he couldn't take it. It belonged to the cabin. It belonged to the dead son. Leo swallowed a sob. It tasted like salt. He walked to the back door, the one Silas hadn't nailed shut yet. He reached up. He slid the bolt. The metal was cold. It screeched. He pushed. The night air hit him. Freezing. Bitter. It smelled of coming snow. Leo didn't grab his coat. He didn't deserve it. He stepped out into the dark. The snow came up to his knees. He started to walk. Away from the warmth. Away from the light. Toward the tree line. Toward the void. Underscore. Silas led the mare into the stall. He latched the gate. The barn was warm. Smelled of hay and horse sweat. Peaceful. But his hands were shaking. He couldn't stop the tremor. He kept seeing Thorn's eyes. Dead eyes. He kept hearing the threat. I bring the town to you. Silas patted the mare's neck. Good girl. He checked the shotgun by the door. Loaded. He picked up the lantern. The flame flickered. A draft. The wind was changing. Blowing from the north again. Bringing a storm. Silas walked back to the house. He kept his head down against the wind. He reached the porch. He stomped the snow off his boots. He opened the door. Leo. He called out. Silence. Silas stepped inside. The fire was dying. The room was empty. Leo? Silas felt a cold pit open in his stomach. He looked under the table. Empty. He looked in the loft. Empty. Then he saw it. The wooden soldier. Sitting alone on the table. Abandoned. Silas felt the blood drain from his face. He spun around. He saw the back door. Ajar. Swinging slightly in the draft. No. The word ripped out of his throat. He dropped the lantern. Glass shattered. Oil spilled. He didn't care. He ran out the back door. Into the dark. Leo. The wind stole the name. Silas scanned the ground. The moon was hidden. But he saw the track. A small furrow in the snow. Dragging. Stumbling. Heading for the woods. Silas ran. His lungs burned. The snow grabbed at his ankles. He fell. He scrambled up. He didn't feel the cold. He only felt the panic. He reached the tree line. The shadows were thick here. Leo. He saw a shape. Small. Curled against the base of a pine tree. Half buried in the drift. Motionless. Silas threw himself forward. He slid on the ice. He reached the boy. He grabbed the flannel shirt. He pulled the child into his arms. Leo was blue. Ice in his hair. His skin was like marble. Silas ripped open his own heavy coat. He pressed the boy against his chest. Skin to skin. Trying to transfer the heat. Trying to restart the heart. What are you doing? Silas shouted. His voice cracked. You foolish boy. Leo's eyes fluttered open. Slicks. Glazy. Go away. Leo whispered. His teeth chattered. Like dice in a cup. They want me. Not you. You be safe. Silas felt a tear freeze on his cheek. He squeezed the boy tighter, crushing him. He looked up at the black sky. He looked at the dark woods. You listen to me. Silas growled. He put his hand on the back of Leo's head. He forced the boy to look at him. You ain't a fugitive. You ain't property. You ain't a problem to be solved. Silas took a breath. The air was sharp as a knife. I buried my family, Leo. Put them in the cold ground. I swore I'd never care for nothing again. Silas's voice broke. But you walked through that door. You brought the music back. Leo shivered violently. He tried to pull away. Silas held fast. I am not letting you go. Do you hear me? The bad men come? Let them come. I will burn the whole world down before I let them touch you. Silas stood up. He lifted the boy effortlessly. He wrapped his coat around the small body, cocooing him. Leo buried his face in Silas's neck. He started to cry. Soft, heaving sobs. Then, a sound. Weak at first, but growing. Humming. Broken. Shaky. But there. It was the lullaby. Silas marched back toward the cabin. The wind howled against them. The snow drove into their faces. But Silas didn't stumble. He walked with a purpose he hadn't felt in years. He walked like a father. He kicked the back door open. He carried the boy to the fire. He sat in the rocking chair. He didn't put the boy down. He just rocked. Back and forth. Creak. Creak. He watched the door. He waited for the dawn. He waited for the war. And for the first time, he wasn't afraid to fight. The sun touched the mountains. Red. Blood red. It bled across the snow, turning the white valley into a bruise. The clock on the mantel chimed. 6 times. The deadline. Silas didn't look at the clock. He looked at the oil rag in his hand. He wiped the barrel of the Colt Peacemaker. The steel was cold. Heavy. It smelled of sulfur and old grease. Leo sat on the floor near the stove. He wasn't humming. He was watching Silas's hands. His eyes were wide, like a trapped rabbit. He clutched the wooden horse. He clutched the soldier. Silas snapped the cylinder shut. Click. The sound was loud in the quiet room. He stood up. He holstered the gun. It felt natural on his hip, a weight he hadn't carried in years. But the muscle memory was there, waiting. Silas walked to the window. The plank he had nailed up blocked the view. But there was a knot in the wood, a small hole. Silas pressed his eye to it. The yard was empty. The wind kicked up swirls of snow, ghosts dancing in the twilight. But the silence was wrong. It wasn't empty silence. It was heavy, pregnant. Silas listened. He ignored the wind. He listened for the unnatural sounds. The jingle of a bit, the creak of leather, the crunch of a boot. There, at the tree line, a snap. Silas held his breath. He saw a shadow detach itself from the pines. Then another, and another. 3 men, maybe 4. They weren't wearing uniforms. They wore dusters, low hats. They moved spread out. Professional. Hired guns. Thorne kept his promise. He brought the town, or the worst parts of it. Silas turned from the window. He looked at Leo. Time to go, Silas said. His voice was calm, flat. Leo stood up. He dropped the horse. It clattered on the floor. He kept the soldier. Where? Leo whispered. The cellar. Silas walked to the corner of the room. He shoved the heavy rug aside. Dust mothballs flew up into the light. He found the iron ring in the floorboards. He pulled. The hinges groaned. Rusty. A square of darkness opened up in the floor. The smell hit them. Earth. Potatoes. Cold damp. It was the smell of a grave. Leo backed away. No. Please. Dark. Silas moved fast. He didn't have time for gentle. He grabbed the lantern from the table. He lit it. The flame jumped. He handed it to the boy. Take it, Silas said. Leo took the handle. His hands shook so hard the shadows danced wild on the walls. Silas pointed to the hole. There's a crate down there. Sit on it. Don't move. Don't make a sound. Leo looked at the hole. He looked at Silas. He was trembling. Silas knelt down. He gripped the boy's shoulders. Hard. Look at me. Leo looked. His eyes were full of tears. Silas reached into his pocket. He pulled out a handful of cartridges. He put them on the table. Not for the boy. For himself. Rayloads. He looked back at Leo. You have the soldier? Leo nodded. He held up the wooden toy. Good. Silas said. If you get scared, if the dark gets too loud, you hum. You hear me? You hum that song. So I know you're safe. So I know you're down there. Leo nodded again. A tear spilled over. Silas picked him up. He lowered him into the hole. The boy's boots found the ladder. He climbed down, into the earth. The light of the lantern receded. Down, down. Silas watched until the boy hit the dirt floor. Leo sat on the crate. He looked up. A small circle of light in the darkness. Silas forced a smile. It felt like cracking stone. I'll come for you when it's quiet. Silas grabbed the trapdoor. He lowered it. Slowly. The light vanished. The floor was solid again. Silas pulled the rug back over the wood. He smoothed it out. He stood up. The cabin felt huge now. Empty. He was alone. Just him and the ghosts. And the men outside. Crunch. Aloud. On the porch steps. Silas didn't wait. He blew out the oil lamp on the table. Darkness filled the room. Only the red glow of the dying fire remained. Silas moved to the shadows near the kitchen. He unholstered the Colt. He held the Winchester in his left hand. Knock. 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 Heavy. Arrogant. Mr. Vance. It was Thorne's voice. Smug. Oozing through the timber. We saw the light go out. We know you're home. Silence didn't answer. He slowed his breathing. In. Out. He became part of the furniture. I have a warrant, Mr. Vance. Thorne yelled. And I have men who get paid by the hour. Don't make this expensive. Silas thumbed the hammer of the rifle. Click. Soft. But in the silence, it was a scream. Outside, the shuffling stopped. They heard it. Thorne laughed. A dry, rattling sound. Have it your way. Burn it. Silas's eyes widened. He smelled it before he saw it. Kerosene. Splash. Against the door. Splash. Against the walls. Then a flare of light. Bright orange. Through the cracks in the door frame. Heat. Instant and aggressive. The crackle of dry wood catching fire. They weren't coming in. They were smoking him out. The temperature in the cabin spiked. The shadows writhed as the fire grew outside. Silas looked at the rug. At the trapdoor beneath it. Smoke began to curl under the door. Gray snakes slithering across the floor. It would reach the cellar. It would reach the boy. Silas gritted his teeth. He couldn't stay. He couldn't wait. He had to draw them away. He had to be the target. He walked to the back door. The fire was at the front. He kicked the latch. He took a deep breath of the smoky air. He stepped out into the night. The snow was illuminated by the fire. Orange and black. He raised the Winchester. He saw a shape holding a torch. Silas didn't hesitate. He didn't think. He squeezed the trigger. Bang. The shape dropped. The torch fell into the snow. Hissing out. The silence shattered. Shouts. Gunfire. Bullets chewed the wood frame next to Silas's head. Splinters sprayed his face. He didn't flinch. He pumped the lever. Clack, clack. He ran toward the barn. Away from the house. Away from the rug. Away from the boy. He yelled. A primal roar. drawing their eyes, drawing their fire. "Come on," he screamed. "Come and get it." He dove behind the water trough. Bullets pinged off the metal. Sparks flew. Silas pressed his back against the cold iron. He listened. Through the ringing in his ears, through the roar of the fire, he listened for the ground, for the vibration. And then he heard it. Faint, muffled by the earth and the floorboards. But there, a humming, high and sweet. The boy was alive. The boy was singing. Silas smiled. He spun the cylinder of the Colt. He looked at the men advancing through the snow. He wasn't the lonely rancher anymore. He was the wall, and nothing was getting past him. Water sprayed into Silas's face. Cold, freezing on his skin instantly. A bullet had punched through the iron trough. Ping. Another one. Silas huddled in the mud. The horses were screaming in the barn. Panic. But Silas was quiet. He wasn't a rancher right now. He was a soldier. He checked the Colt. 6 rounds. He checked the Winchester. 4. 10 chances. 3 men left. Plus Thorn. The math was ugly. But the fire was uglier. The front of the cabin was glowing. Orange flames licked the porch pillars. They were hungry. They wanted the roof. They wanted the cellar. Silas felt the rage burn hotter than the pine. He wiped the water from his eyes. He spat into the snow. He wasn't going to die behind a water trough. Not tonight. He rolled to his left, into the deep drift. He moved like a wolf, silent, low. He skirted the edge of the corral. The firelight cast long, dancing shadows. He used them. He saw the first man, crouched by the woodpile, reloading a shotgun. Silas stopped. He leveled the Winchester. He didn't breathe. He didn't hesitate. The trigger broke. Clean. The shot cracked the night open. The man crumpled, softly, into the snow. Silas pumped the lever. Clack, clack. 2 men left. And Thorn. A shout from the house. Someone yelling orders. Thorn. He was closer now. Near the steps. He thought Silas was penned. He thought he had time. Silas moved again. The cold bit through his coat. His fingers were numb. But his heart was a hammer. He circled the barn. He came up on their flank. He saw the second man, standing in the open, watching the trough, waiting for a ghost. Silas stepped out of the shadows. "Hey," he said. The man turned, eyes wide, surprised, too slow. Silas fired from the hip. The Winchester kicked against his ribs. The man flew backward. Red mist on white snow. Silas dropped the rifle. Empty. He drew the Colt. The weight was familiar, comforting. He walked toward the fire. The heat hit him. A physical wall. The door was smoking. The varnish bubbled and peeled. Black blisters on the wood. Thorn was there, on the porch. He was kicking the door, trying to break the lock, trying to get inside. To the boy. Silas felt a scream build in his chest, but he swallowed it. Silence was the weapon. He walked up the path. His boots crunched on the gravel. Thorn stopped kicking. He heard the steps. He turned around. His coat was scorched. His face was soot black, but his eyes were still arrogant, still cold. "You're hard to kill, Vance," Thorn shouted over the roar of the fire. He raised a pistol, shiny, nickel-plated, a rich man's gun. Silas didn't stop walking. He didn't run. He just walked, steady, in every tabule, like winter. Thorn fired. Bang! The bullet tugged at Silas's coat sleeve. Missed. Thorn's hand shook. Fear. He finally saw it. He wasn't fighting a rancher. He was fighting a graveyard. Silas raised the Colt. He didn't aim. He pointed. "Drop it," Silas said. His voice was under the roar of the fire. But Thorn heard it. Thorn hesitated. He looked at the gun. He looked at the burning door. He looked at Silas. He sneered. "It's just a boy, Vance. Just a throwaway." Silas pulled the trigger. Boom. The shot hit Thorn in the shoulder. He spun around. He dropped the nickel pistol. He fell against the railing. He slid down, clutching his arm. Blood seeped through the expensive fur. Dark and thick, Silas walked up the steps. The heat was unbearable. His eyebrows cinched. He stood over Thorn. He cocked the hammer again. Click. Thorn looked up. His arrogance was gone. Only pain remained, and realization. "Don't." Thorn gasped. I can pay you." Silas looked at the burning door. He thought about the cellar. He thought about the scars on Leo's back. He thought about the humming. He looked back at Thorn. He lowered the gun. "Get up," Silas said. Thorn blinked. Hope flickered in his eyes. He struggled to his feet. He leaned against the post. Silas holstered the Colt. He stepped in close. Too close. He grabbed Thorn by the fur collar. He slammed him against the burning pillar. Sparks showered down. Thorn screamed. "You listen to me," Silas hissed, his face inches from Thorn's. "You go back to town. You tell them Silas Vance is dead. You tell them this place is cursed. You tell them whatever you want. But if I ever see your face again, if I ever see a carriage on that ridge, I won't shoot you. I will bury you alive. Do you understand?" Thorn nodded, frantic, terrified. Silas let go. Thorn crumbled. He scrambled off the porch. He fell into the snow. He crawled toward the carriage, like a broken insect. Silas didn't watch him go. He turned to the door. It was glowing. The wood was soft, charred. Silas kicked it. Hard. Once. Twice. The lock shattered. The door fell inward. Smoke billowed out. Gray and choking. Silas pulled his bandana over his face. He stepped into the inferno. The room was hot. Oven hot. The curtains were gone. Ash floated in the air. But the floor held. Silas dropped to his knees. He crawled to the corner. He found the rug. It was smoking, singed at the edges. He threw it aside. He grabbed the iron ring. It was hot to the touch. He yelled, "Leo!" No answer. Only the roar of the fire. Silas pulled. The trapdoor opened. Cool air rushed up. Sweet. Earth-smelling. Silas leaned in over the black hole. "Leo." Silence. Then a sound. Small. Trembling. From the deep dark. Hum. It was shaky. It was weak. But it was there. The lullaby. Silas slumped against the hot floorboards. He closed his eyes. The tears came, cleansing the soot from his face. He's alive. The war was over. The house was burning. But the family was safe. Silas sat on the porch steps. The fire was dead, killed by snow and sweat. The front door was a black, gaping mouth. Charred wood groaned as it cooled. Crack. Pop. The sound of a house settling after a beating. Leo sat next to him, wrapped in the scorched wool blanket. He was shaking again. Not from fear. From the cold. The adrenaline had washed away, leaving only the freeze. Silas put his arm around the boy. He felt the small ribs expand and contract. Breathing. Alive. The night was silent. The wind had died down. The stars looked down on the blackened snow. Cold. Indifferent. Silas looked at the wooden soldier in Leo's hand. It was miraculously unburned. Protected. Silas cleared his throat. It tasted of smoke. "Leo," he said soft. Leo looked up. His face was streaked with soot. Tear tracks cut through the grime. White rivers on a dark map. "How did you know?" Silas asked. The question hung in the cold air. Leo blinked. "Know what?" "The song." Silas pointed to the toy. "The soldier. I carved that for my son. I buried it with him 3 years ago, under the cottonwood." Silas felt a chill that wasn't the wind. It crawled up his spine. "You shouldn't have it. Nobody should have it." Leo looked down at the toy. He rubbed his thumb over the chipped hat. He shivered. He pulled the blanket tighter, looking at the dark tree line, expecting the monsters to return. "I was running," Leo whispered. "Before I came here, I was running from Horn. It was cold. So cold I couldn't feel my feet. I found a tree, a big one, by the river. There were stones under it, graves." Silas stopped breathing. He knew the tree. He knew the stones. "I hid there," Leo continued. "I curled up in the snow. I wanted to sleep. I wanted the cold to stop hurting." Leo paused. He looked at Silas. His eyes were wide, honest. "Then I saw him, too." Silas choked out. "The boy," Leo said simply. "He wasn't cold. He was light, warm light, like the sun on a rug. He was sitting on the stone, holding this." Leo lifted the soldier. Silas's heart hammered against his ribs, harder than when the bullets were flying. "He gave it to me," Leo said. "He told me to take it. He told me his papa was sad. He told me his papa needed saving." Silas covered his mouth with his hand. He tried to stop the sob, but it broke through, a jagged, raw sound. "And the song?" Silas whispered. He hummed it. Leo smiled faintly. He said it makes the scared go away. He said it brings you home. Silas looked at the boy. He looked at the ruin of his house. He looked at the stars. He realized then, the humming wasn't an intrusion. It was a message, sent from the void, to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Silas pulled Leo into his chest. He buried his face in the soot-stained blanket. He wept. He cried for the wife he lost. He cried for the son he buried. And he cried for the son he found. The tears were hot on his frozen skin. They washed away the ash. They washed away the cynicism. The silence of the valley wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Silas looked at the cottonwood tree in the distance. The branches swayed gently, though there was no wind. "Thank you," Silas whispered to the dark. Leo leaned his head on Silas's shoulder. He started to hum, softly, the lullaby. It didn't sound mournful tonight. It sounded like a promise. Silas closed his eyes. He listened, and for the first time in 3 years, he was warm. 10 years. The snow was just a ghost story now. The valley wasn't white. It was gold. High summer wheat waved in the breeze. The sun beat down on the tin roof. Hot. Generous. Silas sat in the rocking chair. The wood was smooth under his hands, worn down by peace. He closed his eyes. He listened. The silence of the void was gone, replaced by the symphony of life. The lowing of 500 head of cattle. The shout of hands down by the creek. The ringing of the dinner triangle. Silas rubbed his knee. It ached when the rain came. A reminder of the cold nights. A reminder of the fight on the porch. He didn't mind the pain. It proved he was still here. A shadow fell across him. Silas opened his eyes. A man stood at the bottom of the steps, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a hat that had seen 1,000 miles. He wiped sweat from his brow. He held a pair of leather gloves. "The work is done, huh?" The voice was deep, gravel and honey. Leo. He wasn't the freezing orphan anymore. He was the foreman. He was the future. Silas smiled. It came easy now. The cracks in his face had filled with light. "Good," Silas said. "Sit." Leo climbed the steps. His boots thudded heavily. Solid. He sat on the railing. He looked out at the herd. He looked at the cottonwood tree in the distance. It was in full bloom, green leaves shimmering like coins. "Thinking about them?" Leo asked. Silas nodded. "Every day. But it don't hurt like it used to. It's just memory." Leo reached into his shirt pocket. He pulled out a small object. The wooden soldier. The paint was gone. The wood was dark with oil and age. But it was whole. Leo turned it over in his large hands. He kept it close. Always. A reminder of the boy made of light. A reminder of the pact. Suddenly, a rider galloped up to the gate. Dust plumed in the air. Urgent. Silas tensed. His hand went to his hip. Old habits. The phantom of the black rage flickered in his mind. Is it Thorn? Is it the state? The fear sparked. Hot and sudden. But the rider waved. It was just Miller from the next ranch over. Coming for supper. Silas let out a breath. He unclenched his hand. The war was over. Really over. Leo saw the tension. He saw the old soldier wake up in Silas's eyes. He put a hand on Silas's shoulder. "We're safe, Pa," Leo said. "Nobody's coming." Silas patted the hand. "I know. Just checking." Leo leaned back. He looked at the sunset, purple and orange, painting the sky. He started to make a sound, low in his throat. Hum. It wasn't a cry for help. It wasn't a shield against the dark. It was a melody, rich, steady, the same lullaby, but changed. It drifted off the porch. It mixed with the wind chimes. It floated over the wheat. Silas closed his eyes again. He let the sound wash over him. He pictured the empty chair at the table. He pictured the boy in the snow. He pictured the man on the railing. The circle was closed. The ice had thawed. And the house was full. If this story stirred a memory or two, saddle up with us again. Hit subscribe and help keep these old frontier tales alive. Out here, every name, every trail, every sunset still matters. So till we meet again, friend, keep your hat tipped to the past and your heart pointed west.